That's right, folks. Another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. Today, discussing the AFC South. Now, today's show is about the free agencies of the AFC South, but there's a lot of key names in this division. Can the Colts finally get the damn QB situation figured out this offseason? Matt Ryan is still on the team, but it sounds like it's inevitable for him to be cut. You got players like Brandon Cooks that are heating up the combine off the field as trade rumors surround players like Brandon Cooks as well. You have Calvin Ridley returning to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Tennessee Titans cutting cap like crazy. We got a bunch of stuff on today's show to discuss with our guest, Jacob Char. Now, before we do, make sure you follow us across the board at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube, IG, and TikTok. You know, I got people asking me, are we going to do the cat trend with the giant cat on Razzball? I don't even know. We might. So jump over to TikTok and find out if we do. Also, make sure you go to razzball.com. We do baseball, hockey, basketball, and football. We have great writers dropping knowledge for us all off season long. So make sure you jump over to razzball.com as well. But today's show is the AFC South free agent preview, starting right now on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. All right, folks. Better late than never. I mean, honestly, at this point, we're starting a little late. That's okay. I blame the man on my left or right, wherever the hell you watch it. No, just kidding. You can follow him at Jacob Char. No, Jacob, you've been dropping some fun articles recently. Oh, yeah. Are players even good? I love it. Effective, man. Give us some insight about some of the articles you've been writing.
Yeah, so I've been having a lot of fun with it, I'll say. My last article, or the article, I just wrote an article about Aaron Rodgers and some spots where he might end up. So that's live now. That just got published. And the first one was, is Derek Carr good? Because I feel like that's a question a lot of people are asking right now. Yeah, I mean, at the end, spoiler, yes, I think he's good. But a lot of people are calling him trash. A lot of people doing this. Derek Carr hasn't had, the opportunities that a lot of people had. I like to compare his career to Matt Stafford. You take him from a place where he's had no defense, no offensive line for, 7 years. And now all of a sudden you put him in a situation with a good defense and a solid a stable offensive line and a stable coaching situation. And a team that can hit on some draft picks. Now all of a sudden you can see what he can really do. And, it's yet to be seen what that's going to look like. But in the spots that are interested, New York, the Jets, Carolina, New Orleans, any of those three, I think, would be very solid landing spots for Derek Carr.
Yeah, and listen, I'm in the Derek Carr boat. I like him. I think the what he did down the stretch 2 years ago to get them into but by the way, beat Justin Herbert, who everyone loves, mano a mano, to get into the playoffs. So you can say what you want about Derek Carr. Clearly, he could play winning football. He didn't stand a we talked about Josh McDaniels with Aaron Rodgers. Well, clearly, it didn't work with Derek Carr either. So it might be a Josh McDaniels issue. But let's get into it today. We're going to talk a little bit about some of these teams in the AFC South. And another team that we're going to talk about right now is the Indianapolis Colts. And now the Colts, on the surface, when you look at their free agents, they don't have a lot of big-time offensive glaring needs outside of Paris Campbell, who's probably your biggest headliner. They do have some depth on the offensive line, but I think it's more of a indicative of how far they have fallen just from the last, just like 2-3 years ago, having one of the best offensive lines in football to not that great. They do have some good foundation pieces in Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly, but it doesn't seem, and then their right tackle is pretty good, Braden Smith, but overall they are really weak at the two other spots. Paris Campbell's interesting though. I do like him as a player. I think he really kind of finally stayed healthy, which is the most important thing. And I think he put together a really solid season for them. He could be potentially coming back, but I don't know. They don't have the cap for it. $2.6 million. They do have the fourth pick overall as well. Do you think Matt Ryan is on the move? Do you think he gets cut? Do you think they use that fourth pick? What are you thinking for this free agent class / offseason for the Colts?
Man, I think it really depends on what Matt Ryan wants to do. Does he want to be a starter still? Can he be a starter still? If we're being honest, probably not. So can he accept that veteran backup role for whatever quarterback the Colts end up drafting? Because other than Bryce Young, none of these guys are, even Bryce Young is questioned, but none of these quarterbacks that are going to go early and especially at that Colts pick, are considered pro ready guys yet, right? Like day one starters, whether that is a CJ Stroud or an Anthony Richardson or Will Levis, whoever that ends up being. Matt Ryan would be a very solid piece to have on the bench in order to, kind of help develop this quarterback, help ease them in. Throwing a rookie into the fire right away, I've always said it never works. There is not a single example of that working that we've seen in any point in any sort of recent years, right? Even like a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who had a really solid year this year, took that team to the playoffs. Now all of a sudden, like look at his rookie season, he was not good, right? Zach Wilson struggled, obviously had a terrible rookie year. Even Justin Fields, he didn't do much, but he did not look like the 2022-2023 Justin Fields that we just watched. So I don't know. Like, I think Matt Ryan, I think it would be beneficial to the Colts to have Matt Ryan on the team. But it's really all up to him. He's a guy who, if he stepped away tomorrow, like he's in the Hall of Fame discussion. So I don't know. But about Paris Campbell, he's 26. I don't know how much they're going to want to re-sign him for, but the names on this team, I think Alec Pierce kind of coming into his own towards the end of the year was big, and not great for Paris Campbell if he wants to stay in Indy. But I think between Pittman and Pierce, they're probably going to let Paris Campbell walk, maybe look for a cheaper option in the later rounds of the draft or in free agency.
Yeah, I think it starts with Shane Steichen, right? Because, this offensive coordinator from the Eagles, a long time with the Chargers. Now, you could say all you want about his recent success with Jalen Hurts. Prior to that, he was with Phillip Rivers. So it's not like he needs a mobile quarterback necessarily, but you would think he would want to mimic the blueprint that really made him a head coach, right? So
Totally.
Honestly, there is a lot of, I do like this idea of the Colts going out and getting a type of quarterback. Now, I know the kid out of Florida is definitely probably the closest thing to a very extremely mobile quarterback like that, but I don't think they're going to take him at 4. Who knows? I did say my bold take of the offseason would be that the Colts trade for Lamar Jackson or a Justin Fields type player, but I don't think that's going to happen anymore either. But I think that the coaching staff coming in, the first thing they got to do is they got to fix this quarterback situation. I think Matt Ryan's aging like Peyton Manning and not Tom Brady. So I don't think Matt Ryan is all of a sudden going to just hit this 40s and go, oh, I still got 5 years. I think Matt Ryan, you can see it in his arm strength, his lack of mobility. He doesn't offer any elite traits anymore at his age, and I think that's really the problem. Now, if he played behind an elite offensive line that he had no pressure, could he still deliver the football? Absolutely. But at the same time, I think this coaching staff is brand new. They want a fresh start. So I could see Matt Ryan either getting cut, saving that $17 million, and moving on. Now, the next question comes, I think Jonathan Taylor with this coaching staff is great. Shane Steichen and the Eagles committed to the run. That's going to be good news for Jonathan Taylor. They're going to be a run-first offensive team. The question comes, are they going to have another 2-back, Kenny Gainwell type guy? Remember, because the Colts coaching staff, which Nick Sirianni got hired to the Eagles, now Nick Sirianni's guys are going to the Colts. So it's just going back and forth between these two teams. So my opinion is I think that Paris Campbell walks because of the money they have currently saved. Even if they save the money on Matt Ryan's contract, it's got to might have to go to a quarterback. Yep. Like you just brought up, none of these kids are ready. So who is it? I think Gardner Minshew makes a ton of sense for this team as a placeholder. The backup, he'll know the system. He knows what Shane Steichen wants to run. He looked okay as a starter for them in spot starts. You put him with a rookie. I think that's a great combination. Any final thoughts about the Colts before we move on?
Yeah, I'll throw another name out there. Bring back Jacoby Brissett. I don't know if he would come back to Indy, but I mean I think that would be a really solid option for them. If him or Minshew, I think those are both very, very solid options.
We are very pro Jacoby Brissett over at Razzball.com.
I am too. I am too.
I like him.
Absolutely.
My bold take for Jacoby was Arizona Cardinals.
I like that. I really do. I like that a lot.
As a good backup, he knows their system too because the quarterbacks coach for the Browns is over there. But enough about the Indianapolis Colts and Jacoby Brissett.
I'll say Jacoby Brissett for this team right here. Like honestly, I know
go for it.
We'll talk. Well, I mean, it's like you could say it's the Houston Texans, right? Like this is another team that's going to be drafting a quarterback. They're drafting at 2, so they're probably not getting Bryce Young. Which, unless they make some crazy trade to 1, which I don't think. I mean, like the tape I've watched so far, the difference in talent between a guy like Bryce Young and a guy like CJ Stroud, who might go at 2, like I don't think the gap is as big as people are making it seem. which is, I guess, is kind of a hot take. I realized I didn't know that in the draft community that's kind of a hot take, but it is. But yeah, none of these guys are ready to start. Like I'll say this for every single team that needs a quarterback in this draft. You need to let them sit. Like Jacoby Brissett would be a perfect bridge guy for the Texans. He can win games. The Browns were better with Jacoby Brissett playing than they were with Deshaun Watson playing this past season. Like that's how it was.
It was true. It's true, but come on, Deshaun Watson took a whole year off. It's hard, but you're correct.
He was busy. He was busy. He was busy.
He was getting his. You know what? This is a kids show, so let's keep it PG, of course. But it's no, I'm just kidding. Actually, I do mark not for kids. So you know, he got jerked off by masseuse. Whatever. I don't know. Anyway, but my point is, yeah, I just think yes, he did play better, but we got to give. I think Deshaun Watson's gonna have much better season this year. But go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, no. But this is a team like you'll see they're basically $34 million under the cap. They have a lot of stuff to work with. Like this is a very flexible team. They have D'Amico Ryans coming in who so I very much like D'Amico Ryans. I think that as a head coach, he's going to be very solid. I think that a team like the Texans could have used an offensive head coach. If they want to bring in this young quarterback, but at the same time, they're going to bring in a young quarterback and they're immediately going to trade their best receiver. So they're sitting at 2-12. So I think they go young quarterback, young receiver at 2-12. I think that's just how the board's going to fall for them. And that's honestly really exciting if you're a Texans fan, if they exist. They're
just like Bigfoot. They're out there.
Yeah,
baby.
they'll come out of hiding. They're like Cardinals fans. They'll come out of hiding when they're good. But yeah, I like this. This is weirdly enough, the Texans are an exciting team to watch for this offseason. They could make some big moves, I think.
You know, with the Texans first, I think a guy that makes a ton of sense is Jimmy Garoppolo. They're basically the 49ers Central now. Totally. Jimmy G comes in, and Jimmy G is someone that you can win games with. So you don't have to become like this team where you're going to tank and finish with the top 3 pick. But granted, the best part about Jimmy, he'll get hurt in 5 or 6 weeks. I'll give you the rookie to get some time to sit behind him and whatever. But
the Justin Fields strategy.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So Jimmy G makes a ton of sense. But when you're looking at this team, they're a little bit kind of like, Brandon Cooks is on the trade block. And unfortunately, in my opinion, why would you want to trade Brandon Cooks? Nico Collins looked okay, but he's not ready to be a 1. And like you brought up, maybe you go to 12 and you draft a receiver at 12. Maybe you do that. Okay. And then you start a clean slate. You have your number 1 quarterback and your number 1 receiver. They come up together, together. Maybe that's an idea. I totally get that. But there's a couple things. Based on they have a bunch of cap space. They're in a pretty good spot here. They don't have a quarterback where they need to spend big money on necessarily. Jimmy G might come in. The weirdest part, so I wanted to bring this up with the Titans, but I'm going to bring it up sooner. There's only 11 teams in the NFL that have big 30 million plus contracts a year on quarterbacks. Only 11 of 32 teams. Most teams don't have that. And then when you drop from there, it goes from 30, then it goes to the Jameis Winston around 14 million. And then it's all the rookie contracts. So, the Texans, if you're looking at what is Jimmy G going to command, is he could command 14 like Jameis, 20, but you're not going to give him the 30 plus. So you're not going to eat up all your cap space there. However, if they decide to go a different direction and they start bringing in players, maybe that changes. But I do think that's one thing. The other thing I want to bring up, though, is this is a new scheme. This is a brand new offense. This is the 49ers scheme. The tight end position in this offense could be an underrated asset. Now, they got guys like Brevin Jordan and, a bunch of day 3 picks right now. So I think if this is a situation, I talked about Dalton Schultz being a sleeper to join Houston Texans. I think that would be a decent spot for him to land as well. And I think there's opportunity based on the offense and how they utilize the tight end in the Shanahan scheme that they're going to bring over here. I think there's an opportunity. The other thing is Dameon Pierce. Rex Burkhead's a free agent. It looks like they're going to gut the system here. I think you might have an opportunity for guys like Raheem Mostert or Jeff Wilson to join this team, similarly how they both went with the Dolphins. You could see one of those guys jumping over to the Texans to back up Pierce. But I think Pierce they're going to love that kid right away. And I think he's got a big time shot to really dominate touches in this offense with guys like Burkhead and, all their backup running backs are basically free agents. So any other thoughts about the Texans?
Yeah, I'll throw another name out there at running back because they have enough. They have enough cap space with Dameon Pierce, a guy who I think could really complement his game if I don't know what that injury is going to look like for Pierce next year. But Miles Sanders, I think that, I mean, he's a guy who's probably going to be looking for a new home this offseason. Do they want to spend big money on a running back? That's the big question for every team this offseason that needs one. But you got to get, you're right, that you got to get that talent in that at running back and that at tight end. So, I mean, I mentioned a wide receiver at 12. I could see a tight end at 12 if the right guy is there. I think that's absolutely possible. We see guys like OJ Howard, Jordan Akins has been pretty solid these last couple of years when they've asked him to step up. But you need a guy who can make who you need a look how crucial a game-changing tight end is. Look at the playoffs this year. I mean, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, even like what a Mark Andrews can do when that offense is healthy. Dallas Goedert for the Eagles. I mean, what an impact he made. Dalton Schultz in that offense, second in the team in targets, catches, like all this stuff. A solid tight end changes an offense because not a lot of teams have linebackers that can cover a tight end effectively. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it completely changes a scheme when you can do that. So I think that that'll be very important for the Texans this offseason as well. You're totally right.
Gotcha. All right, let's jump down to the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars are a team that the latest news is one of the things I was going to bring up is Evan Ingram's kind of their biggest name on the offensive side of the football. That is a free agent. He sounds like he's going to get the free franchise tag for this team. However, just remember, there's a little carrot out there named Calvin Ridley. Okay, yes. Calvin Ridley is coming back, and that is going to knock all these guys down one peg. It's not. You're basically taking Marvin Jones off the team, an aging 30-plus Marvin Jones, and putting in Calvin Ridley in his prime, alpha number one. Just remember that in the back of your minds when you're drafting Jags next year, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. Remember that the alpha is coming, and that's going to impact these guys, and they're going to probably knock down a spot or two because you're going from Marvin Jones, who's the fourth option, to Calvin Ridley, who's the one option. So just remember that in the back of your minds. Wanted to say that. The other aspect of this, too, is that for the most part, they're $24 million over the cap. So they're going to have to move some people out in and out. Now, I don't have any great glaring team players that they could probably cut, off the top of my head. But at the same time, that's something to watch, especially with guys like if you have Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, who's not going anywhere, Calvin Ridley coming in, not going anywhere. If they tag Evan Ingram, he's not going anywhere. Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence, where's the money going to come out of? Maybe defense or the offensive line. Mm-hmm. So what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that it's going to come out of the defense, and I think that's going to be a big problem for the Jaguars next season because this offense is going to be explosive. I mean, you said it, Calvin Ridley coming in his prime. Essentially, the guy who's going to get the axe because of Calvin Ridley is going to be Marvin Jones, which sucks if you're him, but I mean, it is what it is. He's 33. Calvin Ridley, realistically, we mentioned it with Deshaun Watson. Calvin Ridley hasn't played in a year. We have no idea what he's going to look like. The game is very different for wide receivers than it is for quarterbacks taking off a year. But the game, we've definitely seen it before. The game can pass you by in just a year. I think the Evan Ingram tag was, I think that was a great move until they can come up with a long-term contract for him because he was a big part of this offense. I don't think Christian Kirk is going to get knocked down as much as it seems. I think that I think that he has that chemistry with Trevor. We saw it all this season. And Trevor's going to want to play with his fancy new toy, but I think Christian Kirk will be about as maybe a little less reliable than he was this year, but I think he'll still be a very solid wide receiver 2 option in fantasy. But they've got, you cannot take it out of your offensive line. You can't. Like this Jaguars team has been rebuilding for almost 10 years. Now they've got it. So this Jawan Taylor's a free agent, their right tackle. I don't know exactly where they're picking in the draft, but
25, 57, and 89 are their first 3 picks.
Yeah. So I don't know how the offensive line group is going to play out at 25. So I guess they'll cut people on the defense. I don't know.
Shaquille Griffin's the first guy that comes to mind. There's a lot of news about him. They could save a decent amount of money. They can get probably about 50% of that just from cutting him. So he's a pretty good corner. However, we're talking fantasy football. I don't give a shit about the NFL. No offense to the NFL. Hey, Jags defense can suck all they want because you know what that means? High scoring games.
Yeah.
Then if that means more scoring, that means that Christian Kirk will be fine and Evan Ingram will be fine, even with Calvin Ridley. So I don't care.
Overs. Yeah.
Cut it from the defense all you want. I don't give a
fantasy
shit.
points and overs, Bobby. Fantasy points and overs.
That's what we'll be doing. That's the Jaguars 2023, baby. I love to hear it. All right.
That's the headline.
Absolutely. Let's jump down to the last team is the Tennessee Titans. And they are one of the teams we talked about in our episode with cap casualties because the Tennessee Titans were well over the cap. Well, they made all their moves. They cut Robert Woods. They cut a couple guys on defense. They let go of Taylor Lewan. And now they're 9.9 under the cap. So they did a lot of maneuvering, and they got to keep Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry on board. But they're very thin at the skill positions. You know, they got Austin Hooper, Goff Swaim, all their tight ends are gone. Robert Woods, like we just brought up, is gone. Really, it's Treylon Burks and maybe Kyle Phillips, their other rookie slot receiver that kind of made some buzz. But I think the Titans realized, because they got rid of their GM, that gutting your skill position group was stupid. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
See you later, Corey Davis. Oh, bye, A.J. Brown. Oh, everything's going to be fine. No, of course. Ryan Tannehill was a product of the fact that they had a great running game, a good play action scheme, but he had two really good receivers.
And we knew that. It wasn't like we watched them in the AFC Championship for 2 years and we were like, this is Ryan Tannehill's team. We knew that that wasn't the situation. So why did they all of a sudden decide that they could just get rid of it made zero sense to me. They replaced AJ Brown with a younger, I like Treylon Burks, but he's not as good as AJ Brown. AJ Brown's a top 10 receiver in the NFL right now. You don't just draft those. Especially at 16 or wherever they were sitting in the draft. So the Titans are, if you go back, when you mentioned the Titans, I audibly scoffed because they are the most boring team in the NFL. Something about this Titans team, I do not know if it's ownership, but other than Derrick Henry, I do not want to watch this football team play. They are not great on defense. I love Mike Vrabel. I think he's a great coach and he's done a lot with a little, but now that little that he had is now dwindling into even less. And now there's only so much you could do even if you're the best head coach. Tannehill is clearly declining. Derrick Henry,
but that's almost hypocritical to say because they gutted his receiving core. They lost his best three players were Jonnu Smith, AJ Brown, Corey Davis, all gone by this year.
That's fair. That's fair.
And Treylon Burks wasn't even healthy most of the year, and Robert Woods is coming off a serious injury. So how could you look at Ryan Tannehill and say we could judge you at all? Because really, to be honest with you, the guy we replaced our best player with barely played. The 30-year-old wide receiver 2 was coming off a serious injury and started off slow. And then you're throwing to a bunch of Austin Hooper was a waste. He didn't do anything. So I guess I'll have to push back. Just I don't know if Ryan Tannehill's done, but they should have known that Ryan Tannehill needed the good players around him. That's what they should have done.
So I'll throw this out there too. And I think that this is a big thing that's going to happen with new management. I think that they are gutting this team because they might just go all in on this rebuild. And in terms of, do they want to compete right now? The Jaguars are getting better. The Jaguars are the only team they'll probably have to worry about in terms of winning the division this year. So get Tannehill. You want a guy you want another guy next to Burks. Is Burks a wide receiver 1? We have no idea. What is stopping you from now trading for DeAndre Hopkins? There is nothing that stopped a second round pick. You can pay him. DeAndre Hopkins is still a wide receiver 1. Every time he's played, he's been fantastic on the Cardinals. I think he still has it. And I think that if you want to take him for, 2 years, let's say, put him next to Treylon Burks, take some of that weight off of his shoulders. Why not? Why not get Tannehill another weapon? See what you truly have. See if Tannehill still does have that.
This is a TikTok video I made, right? It's bold predictions. DeAndre Hopkins traded to the Tennessee Titans.
There we go.
I made that 2 days ago. That's wild.
Great minds think alike.
Look at us, huh? Look at us. Look at that.
That was, yeah.
Because I brought it up because Tim Kelly. So Tim Kelly, who was the QB coach last year, just got promoted, but he was with the Houston Texans for a long time under Bill O'Brien. But Tim Kelly is underrated. First of all, Davis Mills, as a rookie, played very well under the guiding hand of his offensive coordinator, Tim Kelly.
He was the best one in that damn class.
Yeah. And then the Texans thought, oh, well, screw that. Our 3rd round rookie quarterback exceeded expectations. Let's fire the OC. What is so fucking that drives me fucking crazy when teams do that? If a rookie quarterback exceeds expectations, do not fire anybody on the offensive staff. Just keep him for another year. If he regresses, great. Then you fire him. But you don't. And then sure enough, he regresses under Pep Hamilton. The same thing happened to Daniel Jones with Pat Shurmur. It happens all the freaking time. It's so freaking annoying. But anyway, we're talking about the Titans. Tim Kelly, I really do like him. But to push back on what you're saying again is that then you should have cut Ryan Tannehill, because you could have saved a bunch of money on Tannehill. There's no reason to be paying Ryan Tannehill $30 million if you're going to rebuild.
I'll be honest, honestly, I just don't think that they like Malik Willis. I think that they drafted him and they saw him and they were like, what he showed that was special. Like, okay, I get that he played a few games and he was a rookie and he was not pro ready. He played at Liberty. Like he was not a pro ready guy coming in. But even those types of guys, you should be able to see a little something. There was nothing that I watched, at least in the games that Malik Willis played, that I would call him a special quarterback, a franchise kind of guy. But you don't draft him. What did they draft him in the 3rd?
Well, that's the thing about this QB class, because last year people were putting him into the Panthers in the top 10, and he drops all the way to the 3rd round. Like, no offense, but like everywhere I heard, everyone was talking Malik Willis top. They were talking about multiple quarterbacks going in the top 10.
I'll take
these
that
guys felt so. I don't even know what to think about this quarterback class. It could be a lot of smoke, especially because there is I want to say average quarterback talent, meaning like Teddy Bridgewater type quarterbacks who if you're an elite team and you have Teddy B as your quarterback, you could probably make the playoffs, maybe losing the wild card, but Teddy B could probably get you there. So maybe there's a little bit of smoke in all this, a little bit, but. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, this is totally a defensive draft. I've been looking at it, like there's no receivers that are eye popping. There's no Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson kind of guys in this draft that I'm looking at. I'm saying you need to draft this guy. Like Quentin Jefferson is good. Kayshawn, that kid out of LSU is good. JSN out of Ohio State is good. Like, but none of them are eye popping guys. All of these guys would probably be 2nd round picks in any other draft year. It's a quarterback draft, I suppose, because more than last year. But if you want a guy that I think is getting, all that smoke and mirrors and all that, I think that's going to end up being Will Levis. I think that Will Levis might be the 4th quarterback off the board. And each day that goes by, it looks more and more likely. He faces, everything I've seen, every film breakdown that I've watched, he has a lot of trouble in terms of pressure and picking up pressure. And if you're at college, if you have that problem in college, that's a tough adjustment to make in the NFL. But Bryce Young, we know, is going number 1. We know CJ Stroud will probably be the next guy off the board. And then, this rise of Anthony Richardson that we're hearing. And he's great, but he's a project. And Will Levis is kind of that in terms of not quarterback talent, not the results that we saw after the draft, but in terms of prospects, kind of reminds me of what we were looking at with Josh Rosen a few years ago, where we're like, all right, like we know he has talent, like he's a talented kid, he has a good arm, but there's a lot of issues there that you get concerned about. And I'm not saying he's going to be Josh Rosen, but it's the closest. That's to me the closest thing in terms of pre-draft stuff that I've seen.
Yeah, one thing, the last thing I just want to bring up too with this Titans offense is that just 2 years ago, Derrick Henry, all this stuff was booming, everything was great. Their entire starting offensive line, other than their center Ben Jones, is gone from that team. So they're going over. So not only did they lose A.J. Brown and Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith, but their entire offensive line, Nate Davis is a free agent. Dennis Kelly's already gone. Roger Staffeld's already gone. David Quisenberry's already gone. Taylor Lewan is already gone. The only guy that's returning is Ben Jones. So
and Keith Carter, their offensive line coach, is gone.
Okay. So this is just the things that
I believe
I
his name
think
is
that
Keith Carter. I think
that's
he's.
all right.
I think he's on the Jets now. That's the reason I know
You
that.
had me at offensive line coach, so I'm all good. I like it. You fit it right in. I don't even know if it works for me. But my
Beautiful.
point is that there's so much going on around Tannehill and this team that, like, if Tim Kelly comes in, they have to do something in the offseason to give a splash, like a DeAndre Hopkins trade that could say, okay, at least they're going to have Hopkins, Burks. Okay, now I can understand that now Tannehill has a chance with Derrick Henry. But if they don't make that level of a move, and they're going to let these offensive line, and they're going to go through this little retool on the offensive line, and they're going to let whoever develop behind Treylon Burks get the hell out of here with this shit. I don't want to deal with that.
They'll win 7 games if they do that. I'm so like, if they keep this defense that they have right now, which was like not great. They were fine last year, not great. And then on top of that, you have less weapons than you had. You have no offensive line, which is going to make Derrick Henry's job a whole lot harder. And he's still gonna be Derrick Henry, but like you need an offensive line, man. Like you need one. I don't care who you are. And it's gonna make Tannehill's job a whole lot harder because you can't run it every play. So you're in a division now with the Colts, who have always had a very solid pass rush. The Jaguars also very solid pass rush last year, and the Texans they're getting there. But you're in the AFC, very incredibly competitive conference. Way more competitive than the NFC. So if you want to win anything of substance, or if you want to settle on being mediocre forever, fine, keep the team you have. But if you want to take that next step, you can't have a bad offensive line. You can't have a poor defense. Ryan Tannehill is not putting you on his back. No, they'll win 7-8 games if they don't fix this right now. And maybe
I think I'm going to give a little bit of hope. I think that our bold take here that we shared, ironically, which I swear is we didn't even talk about this beforehand.
We didn't.
DeAndre Hopkins going to Tennessee, I could see, because I just like the Tim Kelly connection. Plus, he's a former division rival guy, and that I like the fact that they could kick it right in the Texans' face too if they go get him. But they need to make a move like that if they want to beat the Jags, because the Jags are going to take the next step. If they want to beat that team or make a wild card spot, they got to make a move to help Derrick Henry, to help Ryan Tannehill. And Mike Vrabel doesn't seem like the rebuild kind of guy. So if you're going to rebuild, cut Ryan Tannehill and go make some moves for a quarterback that's younger and call it a day. All right. That's all we got for the rest of the day, folks. Listen, this was another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the comment buttons. Come over to check us out. We're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And, of course, make sure you jump over to razzball.com. Before we close the show, Jacob, tell the people where they can find your content and where to follow you.
Yeah, totally. You can find my content on YouTube at Hard Count Football. You can find all my articles on Razzball. Ton of fun stuff. I'm really excited for this offseason. There's going to be a lot of fun articles coming up. Check me out. I'm doing voiceover work now at Touchdown Kingdom over on YouTube. A lot of fun stuff going on over there. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter, because this is where the most fun stuff is happening, because
nice.
You can hear my opinions on things that range from football and pro wrestling all the way to pizza and all that fun stuff. And
what's
TV
your
shows.
hottest pizza take?
I don't know. I can't. I have to think about it. Without getting canceled. I don't know.
All right. Well,
I thoroughly enjoy Domino's pizza. I don't know if that's a hot take, but I do.
And that's how we're gonna end the show, folks. Once again, I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco. Want to thank my guests again, Jacob Charno. We are out of here.